Hey guys, before I read chapter 8 of our book today, I'm going to do what good readers do, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to think about what's happened in the book so far, especially because it's been a few days since I've read. And so I like to go through and I just look at the list of chapters here, and then I also just go through each chapter. So chapter 1 was called May. And I remember that that's about the month that we're in. So we know that this is taking place in May. And we meet our main character, Ted. He lives in a really small town, Plattsford, Nebraska, and he delivers newspapers. And he is riding his bike, delivering his newspapers. He loves May. School is almost out. And he's driving by and he sees a face in an old abandoned farmhouse, the Andersons farmhouse. And there's not supposed to be anyone in there. Chapter 2 is called The Sixth Grader, and that's where I learned that Ted's in 6th grade, but he goes to a really strange school because there's only 9 kids, 1 teacher, and half of the kids are in 4th grade, and the other half are in 8th grade, and Ted is all by himself in 6th grade. And so he's kind of alone, and his town of Plattsford, Nebraska is not doing so well. There are a lot of things going wrong. The crops are failing. People are leaving. And so the school is kind of going downhill too. But he is a pretty good student, it seems like. He loves to read, and he loves to read mysteries, and he thinks of himself as a detective. So in chapter 3, the stakeout, remember that's where he goes and he sits and he watches to see if he can figure out if there really was a face that he saw in the window. And turns out that there was. And this girl comes out after his stakeout is almost done, and she makes him promise to not tell that they're there. And he gets really nervous. So, the last thing that she tells him is that she needs some food and he should bring some food there tomorrow. So in chapter 4, details, I remember details are like little tiny things, and Ted tries to remember all the details he can about the girl. And we visualized, remember we drew pictures of what we thought she looked like. And at that time we thought her name was Alexa because he read that on her shoe. And so he thinks about all of the things he knows about her, and he also decides that he is going to, in the next chapter, he's the Boy Scout burglar, he's going to choose kindness over honesty this time, and he has gone into his mom's pantry and taken some food so that Alexa, who we later learned that's not her name, but he takes some food so that she has some food, and he realizes there might be more than one person there. So, the next chapter is called Conversation, and conversation is something that you have where you talk to people. And so he shows up and he knocks on the door, and Alexa tells him to be quiet, and he realizes that she's there with her mom and her little brother, and her name is not Alexa, it's April. And so April is living there with her mom and her little brother. Her mom's name is Alexa, and her little brother's name is Artie. And he brings them some food, and then she asks for some other things so that they can survive. And so Ted decides that he's going to also help with that. The next chapter, chapter 7, was called 6th Grade Island. And I remember they talk about how Ted has made like kind of an island in the middle of the classroom with all of his different desks for his different subjects. And in this conversation, some of the older kids are fighting, and he's reading a mystery. And let's see here. I'm really kind of, he tells us a little bit about his teacher. And then he kind of makes a shopping list of all the things that he's going to need. And so it ends with that he's trustworthy and he's a detective. And so he is going to get those things for her. And now I am at chapter 8. And so I'm going to assume that he's going to get some stuff for the family. And I am going to read and figure out what's happening. So, chapter 8, Badges. Ruby Cantrell tried to mind her own business. She really did. Customers at the E&A market could buy anything they wanted to, as long as they had the money. And as long as those teenagers weren't trying to get a hold of things they shouldn't. Because the E&A market was a genuine general store that sold everything from pantyhose to shotgun shells, from sugar cubes to antifreeze. Didn't matter to Ruby what anybody bought. If Mrs. Kellens wanted to buy 6 jars of face cream at a time, it wasn't anybody's business but her own. Probably made Mrs. Kellens feel good to see a whole year's supply of beauty products stacked up there in her bathroom. And if Mr. Arliss brought 7 gallons of chocolate milk every single week, well, so what? The man liked chocolate milk. Ruby tried to pay no mind. She was just the cashier. But when young Ted Hammond started unloading his shopping cart on Wednesday afternoon, Ruby felt like she had to butt in. You know, honey, your mom never buys this kind of bathroom tissue. She gets the one with the bluebirds on it. Maybe you want to take this back? Ted smiled and said, No, it'll be okay. Ruby shook her head, but she punched the price into the keypad. The cash register went beep. Then she rang up 6 cans of soup, a hand-cranked can opener, oatmeal raisin granola bars, a gallon of spring water, a loaf of bread, 4 tins of evaporated milk, a jar of cheddar cheese spread, 4 apples, 3 cans of tuna, fish, instant coffee, plastic spoons and knives, a stack of paper cups, 6 Snickers bars. It sure seemed like a strange shopping list. Ruby stopped short and looked Ted in the face. You're buying matches and candles? Ted had an answer ready. Yup, and the sterno cans too. I was a Boy Scout, you know. Be prepared. That's what I always tell my mom. Gonna be some big storms this spring. Beep, beep, beep. Ted paid the bill, and he made a big show of folding the receipt and putting it in the envelope he'd taken the money from, just like his mom did when she shopped. That made Ruby feel better. Ted carried the 2 plastic bags out to his bike, pleased that he had earned his shopping for strangers merit badge with flying colors, because that's how he was thinking about the afternoon's activities. It was like earning merit badges in Boy Scouts. If you met a certain set of requirements, then you earned a merit badge. In the short time he'd been part of a troop, Ted had earned badges in crime prevention, animal science, and weather. Next on his list for today, Ted was going for his secret transportation badge. He had to haul all the stuff out to the Andersons' place without arousing suspicion. The groceries made a heavy load, but Ted managed to fit everything into his big shoulder bag, except the loaf of bread. He kept that in a plastic bag and hung it from his handlebars so it wouldn't get smushed. Ted was worried about making another trip along County Road 7. Someone was sure to notice and think it was odd, him going out that way twice in one day, but people were used to seeing the boy ride around town with his newspaper bag. So Ted earned his secret transportation badge without a hitch, and he made certain that no one saw him turn in at the old farm. But when Ted laid his bike down behind the Andersons' house, he didn't hurry over to knock at the kitchen door. He took his time, because the next merit badge felt a little scary. Ted wasn't sure he wanted to meet April's mom, Alexa. He was dying of curiosity, but Ted had read plenty of stories about people who needed to hide out. What if Alexa really was a criminal? What if she'd been holding up a bank somewhere and she got hit by a bullet during the getaway, and now she had to lay low with her arm in a sling until things cooled off before she could go find a doctor. What if April's mom was like Ma Barker from the 1920s, the boss of a whole gang of crooks? Or what if she was an old lady with a tattoo on her arm who'd just broken out of prison? And what if someone had been making April tell lies about everything? Maybe there was a desperate band of international jewel thieves hiding out at the Andersons' place after a big heist in Scottsbluff or Omaha. And maybe April and her family had been in the wrong place at the wrong time and they had all gotten taken hostage. What about that? Because stuff like that happened all the time in mystery books. Ted had reached the kitchen porch. He pushed all of the fears out of his mind and pulled himself back to reality. Because whatever else was going on at this house, he had made a promise. He had promised a girl that he'd bring her some food, and he was going to keep that promise. No matter what, it was time to earn his Meet the Mom badge. So Ted Hammond knocked on the back door.